You're listening to the Digital Deep Dive, where we tackle the newest trends, strategies, and pain points shaping growth across the digital landscape. From Amazon and D2C to international expansion, join our host and e-commerce leaders across multiple industries for in-depth discussions on how to maximize your brands in the digital arena. Now, here's your host, Aaron Conant.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this episode of the Digital Deep Dive. I'm your host, Aaron Conant. And today, I've got some friends that I met through Brad Day. He's been on the podcast in the past, was just at the show out at Detail West. And Brad was like, hey, you have to come meet Aaron, who then connected me over with DB, who are both here today from Orita.ai. A really cool tool that I've sent around to a bunch of people in the network, and they're doing something that's really neat. But I also always love the background, the stories behind how we got to a lot of these things that people are solving for. And so, Aaron, DB, thanks for jumping on today. But maybe, DB, I'll kick it over to you. If you want to do like an intro yourself, the company, that would be awesome. And then we'll just kind of riff on the conversation. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks for having me. Hey, everyone. Yeah, I'm DB. So I'm a machine learning engineer and a data scientist. Well, I'm now the CEO of this company, but that's what I used to be. And before that, I was actually a neuroscientist. So I have a PhD in neurobiology. And midway through my postdoc at UCSF, I basically decided that I didn't want to be in academia anymore and switched over into tech. And for the last decade plus, I've been in D2C and e-commerce. So a former neuroscientist who now works a lot with marketing. And our third co-founder, so Aaron's one of our other co-founders, our third one's also a machine learning engineer and data scientist. And so the two of us have worked together very closely for the last decade at startups or doing consulting for a bunch of brands. And it's basically been like, if it's a terrifying data problem that companies face, we've had some hand at trying to solve it somehow. And with that sort of experience, we're always looking to the ground to figure out what to productize. With the idea that especially with D2C, there aren't hundreds of machine learning engineers at all of these companies that can basically use customer data in a smart way to make everyone's life easier or the customer experience better. So how can we leverage all of this technology that's being developed, by the likes of people at DeepMind and stuff like that, but in a way that is democratized for brands where you have a company of 2 or 10 or 15 people and you're selling shoes or you're selling cosmetics and you want to use data in a smart way. So with that being said, we were like, cool, what can we do using the skill sets that we have, but make something that automatically makes merchants' lives easier? And that's actually a pretty big challenge because it's just got to work. Most people don't have the time to take action on a bunch of recommendations or to look at another report. And so we basically did a lot of consulting to talk to brands to figure out exactly what was troubling them. We've done demand planning, pricing, optimization, all sorts of things. And what we basically stumbled upon was that it's very difficult to figure out who to communicate with in an engaged way. You send out lots of content to all sorts of people on your subscriber list, and you want to maximize revenue, but a bunch of them don't necessarily want to hear from you right now. And that is actually a big data problem. And right now, most people are using rules of thumb to solve it. So Zach and I were like, hey, why don't we use all this data? Because we've never had more data about what customers are doing to figure out whom to communicate with. And so with that, we launched our product, and it's just been adopted like wildfire because, it's a very simple proposition. With email, it's ironic that you can send less emails, but actually make more money because of this thing called deliverability. And so the way in which you do it, which is hey, actually send to fewer people who are more engaged, you'll have a higher likelihood of it being in the primary inbox. And as a result of that, you can make more money. How do you do that is difficult and is actually a big data problem. So that's what we're aiming to solve.
Well, it's really funny. And Aaron, I want to get your background as well, but it doesn't sound like it would be that difficult, if you just when you say it, but the implementation 100% is. For anybody who's run a direct consumer site and they see what they're having to deal with and the idea of missing, or, everybody wants the additional touch point, but only if they want to be touched at that point in time. Right.
Yeah, that's right. It's it's something that I think everyone in the space knows, is the case. Like we all have these ideas that we should be messaging people at the right time with the right content to increase conversion and stuff like that. But there's always that risk of like, well, can I just send that incremental email and maybe that will convert?
Mm-hmm.
And if you keep doing that, it's almost like this game theory problem where now all of a sudden you're emailing everybody all the time. And now your signal to noise ratio is so high that that channel is not performant anymore. And so when you look at all of the risks and the rewards, especially with the concept of deliverability, which is like if Gmail or Yahoo declares you as a spammer, now that whole channel is gone. And if you had a 1 million subscriber list, you send out an extra 200,000 emails and now your whole channel is non-functional. And that's like a really, really big risk. And so to actually look at the full picture when communicating with customers is very difficult and very data intensive.
Yeah. I told it's awesome. I mean, that was kind of like what intrigued me in the first conversations, especially with brands, and even Brad Day, who's fantastic, was like, this idea that you can plug it in, you can save money, but you can also reach people that are more likely to respond and react is exactly the scenario that people want. Number one, like, and I say in kind of in the pre-chat, like the number one conversation, if I say the root of it all, is around profitability right now.
Mm-hmm.
And customer acquisition costs are up,
Yes.
shipping costs are up, production costs are up, labor costs are up, and everybody's looking for places to save money. But nobody, again, kind of what you're saying is almost that I was thinking of like that fear of missing out. Like what if I don't send it to them and they were just about ready to buy?
Right.
Man, I should have sent it to them.
Yeah. Right. And it's totally true. And what's really interesting about emails, so that's true of like many channels. What's particularly interesting about email is how nonlinear it is. So it's like with something like SMS or direct mail, you can like call your list and try and send it to the highest propensity of people who are about to buy. But you could just send it to everybody and you'll know that they'll receive that thing on their phone or it'll end up in their mailbox. But email is very different. You pay Klaviyo no matter where your email lands. And just because you hit send on an email doesn't guarantee that it's going to actually be placed in a part of the inbox where someone will see it. And so that's like this really tricky part of the email process. And so you can't just blanket send everybody whatever you want, because the vast majority of email that's sent around the planet is actually spam. Around 80 to 85% of all emails sent are spam. And so we actually live on this very fine line as bulk senders on being classified as spam, because that's where the majority of emails are sent. And so we have to do our best behavior to prove to Gmail and Yahoo and all these other big email inbox providers that like, no, our content is engaging. People don't hate that they're receiving this right now, and they want to receive this stuff. They want to convert. And so therefore, like, put me there in that primary inbox.
Aaron, I think, sorry to jump in, but I think most brands get this for what's worth, and they're doing a good job. Like my background, I ran a brand, started in 2010. And like the state of the art then is pretty similar to the state of the art now, which is you look at your list, you look at who's engaged, and everybody comes up with their own definition of engaged. Generically, 90-day click rate, 180-day click rate. They've purchased 3 or more times, right? Like you come up with some framework around that. So people are trying to solve this problem. The problem is like, this is not a human problem. This is a big data problem. And so like, we want to let the machines, i.e. Zach, our CTO, take over, right? And like really help a brand understand this. And like, I'll give a really dumbed down example, but like, let's say the 3 of us are like a combination of email experts plus an ex-banker plus an ex-consultant. And we can do like literally the best analysis in the world on our brand's history and figure out, cool, 145 days is the engagement window. Somebody hasn't clicked within 145 days, they're out. If they have, they're in. And so let's say you clicked on day 2, T-2, whatever, but day 2, and DB clicked on day 144, so day before the window, and I clicked on day 146. You two look exactly the same, and you keep getting emails, and I'm in a binary way out. And I'm out until maybe Black Friday, Cyber Monday, or whatever you decide, but probably once a year or some huge sale or a win backflow or something. And the reality is like, it shouldn't be binary. It should be like your 2 days ago is worth a point. DB's is 44 days ago, whatever I said, is worth 0.1 points. And my 146 days is worth 0.08 points, something like that. But then when you look at all the events that are in Klaviyo or replace Klaviyo with any like ESP or SMS tool, or even like within Shopify, BigCommerce, Commerce Cloud, you name it, when you look at all the events there, you can actually build a much more complex, like a much more complex set of models, right? Because they're like literally tens of millions, hundreds or billions of data points that you can look at to figure out like, should we send that email or shouldn't we? And then you never want it to be an all or nothing proposition, right? It's like something could happen tomorrow that moves somebody from unengaged to engaged and vice versa. And it's like that I think was like the big leap that Zach and DB were able to take, is like take the thing that people are doing and just like frankly add a heck of a lot of complex like under the hood math to it to then make it just work better.
Yeah, I think we're stacking that on top of, the explosion in direct to consumer business and the explosion of number of, emails and how big the list was. And forever, everybody was just trying to get go to any website, right? If the first thing they want to do, this spinning wheel pops up, give us your email address.
Right.
Which that's fine. That's great. People have built out these massive like subscriber lists. 90+% in a lot of cases don't seem to even interact on a routine basis, but you're still sending them email. They literally cost you money. It's the cost of bearing that data and keep pinging them over and over again. Like DB, like you're saying, Klaviyo's going to charge you no matter where it ends up. It's going through the system. And that's just like mounted up more and more. It goes beyond, I think, technical debt. It's actual like debt. Right?
We think about the savings that we can create in three different buckets. Like one is sure it's hard costs, but I'll come back to that in a second. The second one is like your time. You should not be coming up with these analyses and then running a month. Like nobody runs a monthly audit, a quarterly audit. Like let somebody else do that in the background. Like so that's what we do. Obviously, is like we're moving people in and out of marketing based on the signal as a background tool. And then the third one, which I think people again intuitively get but don't know how to say, is like you obviate unsubscribes. When you stop emailing people when they're unengaged, they won't unsubscribe. And then if you hit them when they are engaged, there's a higher likelihood to purchase. And so like it's quote unquote cheap to send, but then you lose that $100 sale down the road because you're oversending today. The caveat I want to say is like, we are an early stage company, right? Like we're growing really quickly and this is all wonderful. I've started on all of our sales calls in the last 2 months to tell people explicitly, like one, for I think all of our brands, or at least 90% of our customers, like Orita plus Klaviyo costs less than Klaviyo. So we are actually saving them money by existing. And I've my background, I started a brand. I then started a shipping company called Passport in 2017. I was most recently the president at Loop Returns. Like I have bought software and sold software in like hundreds, thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollar like increments, kind of on both sides of that table. Nobody should ever buy a software product to like save a couple hundred or a couple $1,000. I like personally believe that because there's like brain damage on having one more vendor. What really, really, really matters is the deliverability impact and how do you make more money? Like our bigger objective is to grow everybody's Klaviyo bill, which sounds silly, but because our ROI is so much higher, right? That's why Klaviyo doesn't hate us. And like some of the other guys, right? Like we're talking to Interval, we're talking to all of them. And they're like, cool, you become a retention tool because you make our product more performant. And I think that is the thing is like, how do we like supercharge this channel that everybody's invested in and everybody cares about? And how do we do it in a way where it's just like, it's all about ROI for everybody in the ecosystem?
Yeah. You made me think about like retention, lifetime value, right? Is applied 100%. Differently. And if you are going to continually ping me, I'm going to unsubscribe. Right. If you see that I always jump on just before Christmas every year, hit me in November.
That's what you want to hit me?
Let's go. I'm more endeared and I'm more likely, as opposed to I get one every other day. By March, I'm unsubscribing. Like, I'm sorry I gave you it, right? And there's...
I think a big part of that too is just like, we have this concept, their job titles called lifecycle marketing, retention marketing. And when you think about what that means in terms of direct communication channels like email, it's like, okay, let's say you have a product that is bought infrequently or has a long purchase time between them. Classic example are mattresses. You buy a mattress every 10 years or whatever when you move. And so you might be on someone's list, like, like say Tuft & Needle, and are they supposed to email you every day after you purchase that mattress until you buy one 10 years from now? Like the chance of you unsubscribing from a program like that is insanely high, right? Even though you might love the product and all this kind of stuff. Like we've all unsubscribed from brands that we love. And why do we do that? It's because they send us content that we don't necessarily want to receive all the time. But that doesn't mean we don't ever want to hear from them again. But by hitting unsubscribe, no one resubscribes. That number is near zero. you effectively end that channel for that person.
Aaron,
And so,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. And so what we do as part of our model is like to try and intelligently sample when someone is back in market. So maybe you've been inactive for a while because you just purchased that mattress. Well, instead of like hitting you every whatever, some regular interval, it's like, cool, like let's turn you on for 30 days and then turn you off if you don't respond. And then try you 7 months later or 9 months later, or whatever the data suggests is the right way to sample that. And it's like, oh, now we see this engagement, say 3.5 years later, because you moved, keep you on now. And then now you have this higher chance of converting. And we did that without annoying the customer, but then also just and with you literally saving cash and having an experience that like feels more tailored. And all we're doing is just intelligently probing when you're actually coming back.
When DB mentioned lifecycle marketing, is like we end up getting in these conversations, we'll be 20 minutes in. And you kind of made the comment before, which was like, I just want to send that one incremental. Cool, maybe this is the time. Mm-hmm. But we're talking about email, but like nobody cares about DB as an email, as like a Klaviyo profile. They care about him as a prospect or a customer. And so it's really funny because once we start talking that way and we'll run an A/B test, right? And we'll always have a holdout group. And we'll show people like, hey, the people who we didn't email, guess what? Some of them purchased. And I think that's kind of like, oh yeah, right. Like this isn't an email profile. This is a human. And so like they might still buy because you hit them with an SMS or it was their season or they sell something on Instagram or TikTok, whatever, right? Like it was just, they were ready to buy. And I think when you start thinking on like a bigger picture about the profitability and to your point, like retaining the customer, you don't want to unnecessarily shut down any channel. That is like at some point, the right way to engage with the human.
Yeah, you mean you had me think I put myself in a lot of these, right? So I spend my days advising brands and digital, but then as I do a lot of online shopping, we all do. But when I go to hit unsubscribe, they always give me that, which comes to mind, hey, the why, would you like to just receive it less often, right? You have like all the options that pop up to try to not get you to unsubscribe. I always just go to unsubscribe, right? Yeah. This is what I'm at that point. If I'm hitting the unsubscribe button,
that's right.
I don't want any more.
The brands say thank you for not hitting spam because like now with the Gmail and Yahoo rules, right? Mm-hmm. Like 3 out of 1,000 people hitting spam crushes your deliverability. And like that. So at least you're hitting unsubscribe. Not ideal, but
Yeah. I wouldn't want to do that to brands, right? But it is interesting from that standpoint of the tool, like these new methodologies, they have to be used because it's only going to get tighter and tighter and tighter. Right. And this idea that people do hit spam as opposed to putting me in the right bucket. I don't ever hit spam if, like you buy a mattress, right? I think we bought like a softwood mattress. They don't ping me all the time. Right. And I don't want to, but if they did, I'm off the list. Right. But if you ping me every year, every 6 months, I totally get it. Right. I totally get it more often. But you're also toying around with people not hitting unsubscribe. You're right, and hitting spam, and that affects the totality of the online business.
That's right, and that's really where the lopsided nature of all of this comes into play. Because as Aaron said, if it's 3 out of 1,000, and now your channel can get temporarily banned or like demoted to the spam box for entire provider, then it's like, well, all the 100,000 other people who had Gmail addresses who wanted to convert are now not going to see your message as well. And so like there is this genuine risk with this channel, and we don't want to use like fear mongering. It's just the nature of the way that the system works. And if you think about when all these channels, back in the day, direct mail was insanely effective as a channel back in like the 70s and 80s. And then email is insanely effective as a channel, and ad placement on websites is insanely effective. And SMS, some people argue is still insanely effective, but it's like, it still creeps up to being less and less effective because the noise is high. Because when we look at our inbox on Black Friday, it's hundreds of emails, right? And so it's like, where does that fit in? And so you really have to make space for yourself, and you really have to send that content at the right time to the audience that is like captured and engaged and wants to hear from you. And so therefore you can make an impact. And like, that's really important. It's really important for everyone to do together. I mean, That's kind of like the game theory kumbaya sort of version. I know that not every individual brand can think about it, but like it is important as a health of this channel that we all rely on so well, that can be so effective, that we be a little bit smarter about this, because it's definitely true that on the side of the inboxes, they employ hundreds of people with my background whose sole job is to use the latest machine learning to analyze the content of the emails, to analyze the engagement of the emails and stuff like that, to then determine where that thing should go.
It's too cool. I can also see it though from where you're at. Like a lot of brands have gotten hit with all this new tech, right? And they have a tech stack.
Yep.
Tech stack rationalization is key right now.
Yeah.
As people sign up for everything. Again, FOMO, right? During the post pandemic, this is a new tool. I got to try it. This is a new tool. I got to try it. This is a new tool. I got to try it. And all of a sudden, there's this huge.
I mean, that was 100%, right? That was my comment before. It's like, don't get something for like a marginal impact. Just don't.
Yep.
It's not worth your time. And the same is true, which is you had 30 tools. How do you get it down to 6? Right? Is a question for everybody. I think one of the things we think a lot about is, because we're balancing that with like, we could do a lot more, but we try as a company to be hyper-focused. So like, we don't build content for people. In theory, we could, right? Like we've got the ML chops to go analyze all the content and like go build incredible creative. That's not what we want to do. The brand wants to build creative, and we've got dozens of like awesome, as you know, like amazing agency partners, right? Who like use us to worry about, cool, how do we make sure the person gets the email, but like I'm going to go build kind of the badass creative or the on-brand creative. And so I think we as a company are always balancing that, and like our bias, even though like if I were a buyer, I just want fewer tools, is we just want to make as great of a tool as possible in a narrow scope, because we think like that deliverability impact is just worth it. Aaron, can I ask you a slightly different question? Can I change topics?
Mm-hmm.
Aside from Cleveland, Ohio, what's your favorite city? No. All right. So my real question for you is kind of along the lines of like the app rationalization, or like the service vendor rationalization, right? At Loop, we saw a huge shift between 2021 and 2022, right? The story, I mean, appropriately so, right? And it wasn't like a product shift, but the narrative would shift, right? What Loop is really good at was, one, like making your operations streamlined, more effective. It just works, right? It's easy for a customer. The second benefit is turning a return into an exchange. So make it dead simple. If like you return it, whatever, all birds, like size 11, like cool. How do I make it easy for Aaron to convert the 11 to 11.5 or 10.5 or a different color or whatever, or a t-shirt? What ended up happening was like the market shifted completely from growth at all costs, right? When capital was free. And I mean, like I, back in the day, used like PayPal, working capital, and Shopify capital when it first came out to like fund my business. And like, obviously that exploded with like Clearco and everybody else, and like in a big way for brands. So it shifted from growth at all costs to profitability. And like a lot of the software companies either went under or struggling, you name it, right? Because it was easy and it's no longer easy. Do you think that changes back again now that like, I don't think people are as deathly afraid? Or is it like for the next year, because of what's going on in the economy, regardless, like all smart brands or all brands are like going to keep trying to focus? Because like, just for context, I'm an investor advisor in a ton of commerce tech companies and very few brands anymore. And you obviously come at it from the other side. We're like, I know you know the whole ecosystem, but like you specifically advise brands. What do you think is going to happen in the next year or two in that regard?
So I think brands are actually kind of celebrating what's going on in a weird way. And by that, I mean, with the PEVC money drying up, there's a lot of the smaller ones that were never going to make it on the service provider tech side. They're never going to make it. But it was so easy for them to go and get money and then come with the brand new shiny tool that they knew they could short-term monetize. Those are falling away. So it used to be, so I spent a lot of my time, right, with the network, evaluating new tech that's coming out so we can share it. And so there was so much new tech, all focused on like the same problem. And then there's another 100 focused on another problem. Like everybody's trying to figure it out, but nobody has the time to, again, evaluate them all, right? And so even there's a huge burden on the network to even try to evaluate a third of what was going on. But with that really drying up quickly. I mean, we're talking about a matter of a year. It goes from everybody's getting money to nobody's getting money. The only ones that stick around are the ones that were actually profitable, right? A lot of times you had to be post Series A and profitable, where now the PEVC money is flowing into the tech that's really going to work and people are seeing it.
So it's like more signal of quality. Like if you're still here, you're good.
And now they're like, wow, that tool actually really works.
Interesting.
And they've been around longer. They've got the funding, especially if you're a larger company. Like if you're pre-Series A and you're not profitable, like, and you've got like a Colgate asking for a Dun & Bradstreet number, it's like, wait, what? You're like, they weren't working out, but now, a lot of that tech is like, yes, exactly. This is a better signal. It's pouring in, and we're having some standout players in the space, and brands love it. They don't want 100 to choose from, right? They don't want one. They want 3 to 5.
Yeah.
But they don't want 100. And so, and then of those 3 to 5, they all work. It's just, hey, what's the best, working with the platform I have, in this case, the ESP that I have, what's the best match on a cultural fit? And then how much money does it cost? And then I'll add one more thing, what's really neat about the machine learning and AI in this tech is it doesn't require a fleet of nonstop programmers across the globe always fixing, which raises the cost. We've got a point now where you got really cool tech that has an immediate impact, right, on profitability.
Yeah.
But it's not expensive. Like what you're saying is you have a Klaviyo cost, you have a Orita cost, but when you put them together, it's actually lower.
Yeah.
And so I just did a webinar with a company, PDQ, and they do transparency around delivery and checkout A/B testing and what works and what doesn't. And they basically can guarantee a return on investment because they have it. But again, they don't need a fleet of, nonstop, 1,000 programmers on the back end, being the mechanical Turk that AI was for so long, right? Where companies say, oh, we're AI, and you plug it in. It really goes overseas. People crunch it all night long, and they deliver something back in the morning. Like, hey, look at
a buddy started a company like that in 2010. I was like, what is this? He's like, oh, it's Mechanical Turk. I was like, wow. Okay.
Oh yeah, right.
Totally. Like if 2 people say yes, it works.
Honestly, brands didn't care when I had that question. No, I mean, like, do you know what this is happening? They're like, we don't care as long as we're getting the answer.
It works. That's right.
But now they're getting the answer for 20% the cost.
Yeah, it is funny because one of the things that DB and Zach did like beautifully, which I don't like giving them too much credit, but I thought this was on, is like, besides being real mean and rude, one of the things I did very, very well was make it so that Orita just works. And like this really resonated with me, right? Like I ran my brand full out for 7 years. And I'm like a consultant and an MBA and ostensibly should be good at like ingesting data and making a smart decision. But my God, like every report I got or every dashboard I looked at, I didn't care. Like I didn't have capacity to do it. And so kind of what you were talking about with PDQ or with like any company that's playing in the space is actually making it just work, not getting a report to go take an action. Because like, I had a call this morning with an old friend who is like a founder of a brand that does over 20 million in revenue a year, which is amazing because like this is like a part-time business for her. She's also like a tech founder and sold 2 companies. I'm like, okay, you in your spare time are way better than I ever was, like full out at running a brand. But it's her and her husband are the only 2 full-time people, over 20 million a year, right? And like they use contractors and like they just need tools that make them like are just performant, full stop. And I think, I don't know, like definitely in the Shopify ecosystem, that's been a massive shift. I don't see as much at like biggie enterprises where it fits, but when you can just onboard something and it's not cool, here's a lot of data, go think about it. But it's like, cool, we leveraged all your data and we made your life better. That to me is like the secret sauce for a lot of good companies.
Yeah, I just elaborate just on that a little bit. What I'm seeing is all this AI, a lot of the generative AI tools that are out there that people see when I'm talking to brands, they evaluate them and they get really excited at the beginning because they have the use case and the tech is deeply partnered with the brand to create it. And what the reality is that all of the data was structured exactly how the platform needed to ingest it with the right amount of it. And it was iterated on over and over again. And after all of that work, then the right thing came out for that brand. So then, but that's the use case, right? The case study for the AI tool. Well, now you have a brand who sees the case study and gets excited, and then they go to work together and they don't have the right data structure, or they don't have the right data, or they don't have the right assets. And so you can only replicate that if you're exactly the same as that brand. Well, that doesn't happen. And so when you have something, getting to your point where if it just works, like that's just a headache for a brand. Again, we're getting to the noise piece, right? That's just a headache, and the timing, and then the review, and then the sample. And then you're like, wait, this doesn't work. I'm 3 months in. Like, as opposed to, I just need right now, I need something to work. And, that whole AI side will grow, first party data will grow. But right now in that generative space, like you just made me think of that. It was they're like pulling their hair. Like, I just wasted all this time. It doesn't really work. I need something that just works. So
yeah, I think this is something that obviously I think a lot about as a machine learning engineer. It's like there's so much power in what can be done, both from the math side, from the data processing side, from knowledge of how problems are and what solutions should look like. But that additional thing of like, well, how much work is it as a user or as a company or as a brand to actually implement that and to make sure that thing is still working well for you and all that kind of stuff? That's actually kind of like, as you said, it's like not really thought about until almost too late into the process, right? And so that was like one of the major things that we realized, because and this isn't magical thinking from Zach and myself. It's from the fact that we've been ML engineers in the space for a long time, and we've made tons of dashboards that everyone obsessed with for 3 months and then never looked at again, or reports that you go like, oh my god, this is going to change everything, and then we're like, we need to see this every week, and it's like, actually maybe every quarter. You know what? Actually, I only needed it that one time. And so it's just been this kind of like heartache of like building these giant things for different brands, and then those being used for some period of time, but not really used for a long term. And so it was like, what is going to just kind of like keep being necessary and keep being needed? And when you kind of really keep focusing your laser to mean like one specific problem that you can solve, what is that job that you're taking off the table? Because from there, you can always, like, as a company, always build off from that, right? And that was kind of what we decided to do. And the simple thing was like, well, not everyone should have an email deliverability expert on their team. That's it, right? And it's like, that is a job to be done. It is a job that some companies literally have a person for or a team for. And it's like, we can try to replace that concept with a machine. And let's like do that in a very understandable way so that it performs and it works automatically and brands don't have to worry about it. But then they can also measure the performance quite obviously themselves. The nice thing about our product right now is like, we always talk about savings and improving deliverability. And, people ask like, oh, why do you start with savings? Why don't you talk about growth? Like, growth is where you should go. And I'm like, it is. But actually, like, in this environment with all these tools competing and stuff like that, when you lead with grow, there's like, okay, I have 1,000 different questions. And it's like saving. It's like, well, I'm either going to lower my bill or not. Like, I can see that on a receipt. And so therefore it's like really obvious if this thing works. And like, once you have that from our, for our company, it's like, that's how you build trust. It's like, hey, listen, we were going to do this thing. We're going to lower your bill. We're not going to affect your sales negatively. In fact, if we improve your deliverability, your sales will increase, and you will be able to see that. Like, you can measure it yourself by looking at your bill, by looking at your revenue per recipient or your ROAS and stuff like that. You'll see those improvements, and then they can do that. And like, that is really, it's like a really necessary thing, especially in machine learning, because it's like these big black boxes, all this math, all this data being used. It's like, what you really care about is that performance, and the performance in a way that you can understand.
What's the next thing you're going to go tackle then? Is that on the radar yet? Or can you share? Like, is the solutions like this, or is what people are looking for right now? Hey, you know what? I've got to have a person doing this, and no person really wants to do it. And oh, by the way, they're less efficient. That you lose all these different things. Is there hey, we're going after this next?
Yeah. So I think I would keep the framework of kind of how what DB mentioned at the founding of the company is how do we solve really, really hard data problems and leverage the data that a brand has or a tech platform has to create a better shopper experience or an experience for the brand, right? It's like, how do we, if you think about that, it's like, how do we leverage all the data they have to make the tool that they're using more performant? So we are right now in email. The natural next place is SMS, and we're working on that side. DB and Zach actually did a much more complex project around direct mail, which was like kind of the insight behind where the business came. Much harder because it's like online data, offline data, right? Like you've got to go build out that graph, and that's obviously like not the graph. Like you've got to understand like the identity of the person to figure out, do I send them the catalog and print the catalog and pay the mail or not without losing the sale, right? It's like obviously a little bit harder. So I think the like way to think about where we're going is very much through that marketing stack. It is not through the content creation side. It is like helping a brand understand the timing. We're helping their agency. For a lot of our brands, it's like literally their agency who we interact with. Like we even met some of the brand customers because the agencies just use us for leverage. It's how do we help them make sure that the right content gets the right person at the right time. DB, does that? I don't know if there's anything else you want to sharpen on that, but
yeah, I mean, I think that is a great way to say it. And like, it's kind of also like our stake, not against, but just right now slightly askew from a lot of the generative AI stuff, which is like one thing that brands tend to be and agencies tend to be quite good at is content and branding, right? And they need help, and they like take part in networks like yours to learn how to be better about that sort of stuff. But it's like that typically isn't the first thing that they ask us that they need help on. What they need help on is a much bigger problem, which is like, I have this 1 million subscriber list. I don't think I should send it to all 1 million people today. Who should I send it to? And like those sorts of things. And like, or should I send a combination of emails and text messages? And when should I actually send a direct mail because they haven't been responsive on these other channels, or try them out in different combinations? Those are the sorts of things that are like big data questions that are actually difficult to measure precisely, at a human level, but easier to do it at a machine level. And so that's a natural thing that goes, basically everyone in like after the end of month one is like, okay, when are you in SMS next? Okay, when are you doing direct mail next? Like that's always the natural.
Yeah, I mean, if they see it, obviously, yes. I mean, it's working. That's direct mail is unique, right? And you get like near 100% exposure, right? Like impression rate is like right at the top because everybody looks at their mail. But
yeah, and so in those scenarios, it's just like once again, when you have a risk model, a probabilistic model, think about these things, you can really look at all the different costs, right? And so it's like SMS is 100 times more expensive than email, and direct mail is 10 times more expensive than SMS. And so it's like now you're talking about something where sending something to 1 million people now might be genuinely too much of a financial burden at this exact moment to do it once, let alone to think about doing it continually. And so now you really have to like weigh very carefully that actual hard cost when sending those sorts of things out. So like those are the natural ways to do it. And it's like, why send someone a catalog when 10 emails will do, or 1 email will do, or an email and an SMS text, or whatever the combination might be.
Anything we didn't get to that you thought might come up in the conversation or routinely comes up with brands you guys are talking to? And also more than happy to answer any other questions you want to throw my way.
I always have questions. I'll try to come up with another doozy, but I will say, like, I'm just trying to think about recent conversations we've had. And like the only other topic that has been coming up, and it's been coming up a lot actually, is we've seen, we identified this bot, right? We have our data analyst's last name is Fouché. So we call it the Fouché bot. So it sounds super fancy, but like, what we've identified is for about 25% of our customers and 25% of our prospects that they're getting hit by this bot. And so when I say prospects, like we give a free audit to any brand, big or small. It's not like, hey, for your audience, it's like anybody who wants, we're happy to do an audit to show them, like the way we work with a brand, they do an audit. We help them understand how much we can save them, how much we can improve their deliverability or like their engagement metrics. And then like we show them what our pricing would be, and we're month to month, right? So, going back to my history from before, like I've sold $250,000 multi-year contracts. We're the exact opposite. It's like hundreds of bucks month to month, right? Because we're a data-driven team. And so like we actually want to prove it out. Anyway, about a month ago, we found like this anomaly in one of the brands that we were doing an audit for, and we couldn't figure it out. And like what Fouché found was, there's a signature of a bot that's like hacked personal email addresses. So it'd be my like personal email, like called aaron@gmail.com. Somebody would have hacked me and signed me up for a bunch of newsletters. By the way, we see the e-commerce space. I'm sure they've signed up for Substack and the New York Times, like also in banks or whatever, right? Anywhere where you can do it. And they're signing people up for hundreds of emails. And then I get an email from Brad next to me like, hey, Aaron, thanks for joining. Like, here's your 20% welcome code. And I'm like, I didn't join. And I hammer spam or unsubscribe. And so what they're actually doing is attacking me as an individual, right? And like, as DB and I were talking about, they'll like maybe have some financial fraud, and like they're hoping that I missed the email from the bank or something that says like, hey, or like the receipt email, right, of a transaction. And they're nesting it in this 100 other emails that I'm going to receive, right? Because they've subscribed me for stuff. But the brands are getting screwed, because when I start hitting spam, and like we see this in the data, like on average 10x, but for some of the brands, like 100x higher spam rate. So even if you're only getting like a handful or hundreds or thousands of like hacked emails in your list, all of a sudden your deliverability score tanks. So I think that's like the other piece. We are not an insurance company, but we like a big piece of this is like being a big data team with great ML engineers. Like we see stuff with one brand and then we get to bring it to everybody else and identify, okay, cool. Here's this issue. Let's remove it from anybody. So I think that's the only other thing about us.
Yeah.
I'm sure we have other redeeming qualities, and like we're super cool.
You guys are pretty nice guys, and I do appreciate you jumping on. It's been a fantastic conversation. It's orita.ai, orita.ai. It sounds like if anybody's listening right now, go ahead. You get a free audit. That's pretty cool. I'm going to sign you guys up for a bunch of stuff. But with that, I think I just want to say again, thanks so much for jumping on this episode of the Digital Deep Dive. DB, Aaron, thanks so much for your time today. And with that, we're going to wrap up this episode. Thanks everybody for listening in.
Thanks. This was wonderful.
Thanks, guys.